sing. I just want to say thank you for coming along today. It's brilliant to see so many faces here engaging in this. That's wonderful. I was asked to ask Donna along, and I'm so pleased that she's come along this evening to speak with you all. And this is Donna, and this is Rob, the superintendent.
Good evening, everybody.
And Alex is the chief inspector. Just Alex to me. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you very much indeed to Karen. And I'd like to just start by saying, Deputy Mayor, hello, Joe, and to all of you, councillors, thank you so much for welcoming me to Ryde this evening. I think what Karen's asked me to do is to speak to you for about 15-20 minutes, and then we're going to take questions from the floor up until 7:30, because my Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, Terry Norton, is here, and as we've just heard, our Superintendent and Chief Inspector, so your two most senior police officers on the Isle of Wight, responsible for it all, under the Chief Constable, are here, and the four of us are booked on a ferry at 8:20, so I'm so sorry I have a tight deadline of 7:30, but don't worry, the policing on the Isle of Wight will continue once they left the island as well. So, okay, I thought I might start off with a little bit around my role, because there's still a lot of misunderstanding about the role of Police and Crime Commissioner. Give you a bit of an overview of the force, where we're at, with some of the big changes that are coming in since our new Chief Constable has started, and some of the strategic policing requirements I've set for him to deliver. And then, as I say, it's very much going to be over to you, and we have got some very much more specific information about Ryde itself in terms of crime, so if you do want to ask questions about anything and everything, we'll do our very best, but of course the policing experts to give you some of the response and things that are going on will be Rob and Alex. So, okay, my background. So for those of you that don't know, I do have a local government background, so working with Karen and Joe and with Amanda as the senior person who works for the Unitary Authority on the Isle of Wight in leading community safety, working with David and a whole load of colleagues in this room, and Phil, who I've had catch-ups with as well. I do have a local government background, so I was the leader of Portsmouth City Council from 2014 to 2018, and during that time I worked incredibly closely with the Isle of Wight, mostly because of your financial situation. At the time, Greg Clark was Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government, and both myself and a chap, the Labour leader of Southampton at the time, was somebody called Simon Letts, and he and I worked very, very closely together as the two city leaders in Hampshire, and effectively the Department for Communities and Local Government said, you've got to help the Isle of Wight, and we said, well, so do you. But anyway, we took on finance to really try and help the Isle of Wight to drive through some efficiencies, the Unitary Authority, and also to help them generate some more income to pay for key public services. And as you know, the county and Southampton took on children's services and adult social care respectively. And I think that partnership is working very well, unless you tell me otherwise. But the Chief Finance Director from Portsmouth is still your Chief Finance Director at the Isle of Wight Unitary Authority now. So my background coming away from local government, I was a magistrate for 16 years, sat on the South East Hampshire bench, and my professional background was in banking. So I worked for the HBOS Group and now the Lloyds Banking Group for a number of years, and then when I had my children, I had 3 or 4 years off when I had my 2 kids, and then thought I wanted to go back into working in the job that I'd left. Got my reauthorisation to trade again, and a year later, after I'd got my reauthorisation, said to my husband, I don't want to do this anymore. It wasn't floating my boat. I didn't care about the bank share price. I didn't care about if the FTSE was up or down today. It just didn't interest me. And I knew at that point that I really wanted to give something back. And that's when I then became a magistrate. And one of the things, having had nothing to do with policing or criminal justice, I'd like to add, until I became a magistrate, so I knew very little about it. But one of the things that became apparent to me very, very quickly was how cyclical the criminal causation is in terms of the people that are committing crimes. And I remember an older magistrate saying to me when I first started sitting, let's see how long it takes you to be able to spot a heroin addict. And I thought, that's a strange thing to say. That's a bit, singling out people in society. Anyway, and then I realised, because a lot of people that come through magistrates' doors are persistent shoplifters, burglars, and of course they are committing crime to fund their addiction. And then I found myself in this very fortunate position, years later, of having stood for Parliament in 2019 in Portsmouth South. I didn't win, obviously. And then being able to combine my understanding and knowledge of criminogenic behaviours and also the fact that I've been an elected individual, having been a council leader, in this very unique and misunderstood role of being Police and Crime Commissioner. And so I have learned so much over the last few years. And one of the number one thing I have to do in legislation is to ensure that there is an effective police service. And of course I'm not a police officer, so I have to employ a chief constable to do that. And we have a brilliant, and I mean brilliant, chief constable in Scott Chilton. He's been in post now for 9, coming up 10 weeks. I think it's 10 weeks on Monday. He was a Hampshire officer for 28 years. He left 2.5, nearly 3 years ago to go to Dorset as their deputy chief constable, so he got to assistant chief constable rank here. And then he became their chief constable, and then he came back here on the 28th of February this year to be our chief. And in fact, his very first posting, way back in 1992, was actually my local police station in Cosham, so on the eastern side of Portsmouth. And so he is man and boy, grown up with Hampshire Constabulary, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary, and he loves it, he really does. He, like me, thinks that we need to be building on and improving no-nonsense policing. We need to be rolling our sleeves up. We need to be investing more money in neighbourhood policing. And I say this, and I'm really happy to take some questions on this slightly in a little while. There are very few crimes you cannot solve by having a really comprehensive and strong neighbourhood policing team. Because ultimately, it should be about prevention. And actually in communities, and you have some very, very strong communities here on the island, some that have got much, much greater strength and identity than we have in Hampshire. And actually, therefore, that is a foundation upon which to build on, because people know each other. People have known each other for generations. People have known each other, they've known each other's grandparents, they've known each other's, they know each other's children. And that means that you are able to spot where the issues are and where you think things are going wrong, whether that be abuse of children, domestic abuse, whether it be someone who's got a drink problem, lost their job, whatever it may be, that could lead to drink driving, speeding. There's so much with the 130,000 eyes and ears that live on the Isle of Wight that together, hopefully we can make the communities much safer. So when I got elected, one of the first things I had to do was to write a police and crime plan, and that is effectively the strategic document that must be registered with the Home Office within 10 months of becoming Police and Crime Commissioner, and that sets the strategic policing priorities for the Chief Constable. And my number one priority was to recruit more police officers than the government had given us money for. So you'll know the 20,000 pledge going into the last general election, which has just about been achieved last month. And here in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, that was an equivalent of 498 additional new police officers. But I pledged 600. And at the time, in January, February and March 2021, before I was elected, I was a member of the public like all of you. I'd read budgets, I'd looked back over the police finances, and I knew my own, everyone's got strengths and weaknesses, I have many weaknesses, but one of my strengths is around finances, of course, because of my professional background. And I knew that by hook or by crook, I would be able to find efficiencies in this police force so that I could find the money to pay for those extra 102 police officers. So I was bold and I put my name to it and I ran on that policy as my number one policy, which thankfully so many of people on the Isle of Wight supported me in. And I'm really pleased to tell you that I have delivered on that. So the 600 police officer was in fact recruited at the end of February. And because we've now done that, I have just pledged another 50. But I'm hoping that I'll find the money to do 100. But this year I am absolutely committing to 50. And I really, really think the force needs to be at 1,000 as quickly as we possibly can. Secondly, I made a pledge that I wanted to increase police visibility, because it's no good having loads more police if you don't see them. So how do we increase police visibility? Well, first of all, you buy electric bikes, mountain bikes, which I've done. Isle of Wight local policing team were the first out of the traps there to come to me and say, right, you've challenged us, we want some money, buy us some electric bikes. And the first electric bikes that were delivered were here for the Isle of Wight neighbourhood policing team. And in fact, I've been out to Shanklin today with some of the local policing team to have a look at them. I didn't get on one and have a personal idea, but perhaps I should have done that. Anyway, so that's one of the things we're doing, but opening more police stations, opening more front counters, inviting you in, saying come and speak to us. We want to hear about the crime, we want to solve it, and we want to know about the intelligence that you've got. We want to know about the house that you think on the corner that might be a crack den, or that you think may be being turned into a cannabis farm. We want you to tell us that information. That is so important. Number 3 was improving the 101 service, because it has been fundamentally failing most people across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight for a long time, because either they don't get feedback or they're waiting too long and therefore hanging up the telephone and not telling us vital information that we need to know to catch bad people and take them out of your communities. There was stuff around knife crime, there's stuff around unauthorised encampments, there's a whole load of stuff. But if you want to have a look at my police and crime plan, you can. It is called More Police, Safer Streets. I can send you a copy. If you let Karen have your address afterwards, I can put a hard copy in the post to anybody. For anyone who would like to listen to it rather than read it, you can go online, www.morepolicesaferstreets.com, and there are videos embedded in there, and you can hear me and the Chief Constable and other senior police officers talking about the things that we're going to be doing. Now, my final comments really are around the money and the money that we spend. So the total budget for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary is about £430 million a year. That comes from 2 parts. So the most of the money comes from the Home Office grant, policing grant, that comes to me as Police and Crime Commissioner, and the second part obviously comes from taxes. So it comes from the policing element of your council tax, police precept. And that money, as I say, comes to me to then set a budget for the Chief Constable to then deliver policing services. I also spend around £10 million a year on commissioning charities and third sector organisations to be delivering services to support victims of crime, but I've completely turned it around since I've been the Police and Crime Commissioner, because it was all victim focused. I've now got a much greater emphasis on supporting perpetrators of crime to stop being perpetrators of crime, because the best way you can help a victim is to stop them from being a victim in the first place. So around stalking, domestic abuse, there's a lot of stuff we're doing there too, but certainly not at the cost of supporting victims, which of course I have a legal obligation. 3 million of that comes from our local money here, and the other 6.5 million I get given from the Ministry of Justice, very, very specifically. The 2 main government departments that I work with are the Home Office and the Ministry of Justice. My role is very much to hold the Chief to account. It's to be I probably speak to the Chief Constable every day. If not, we're WhatsApping or texting each other every day. I have spoken to him this morning. I spoke to him, in fact, I've spoken to him every day this week. And we do have a weekly one-to-one, just the 2 of us, where we sit down and go through everything and anything that we need to be discussing. I have a team of people that work for me. I have reduced the number of people that work for me and reduced my own office costs by moving location to a cheaper office. So I saved £700,000 within 20 months of being police and crime, no, in fact less than that, 18 months of being Police and Crime Commissioner, and that money went to pay for more cops as well, more police officers. So, you know, we're getting there, we're doing what we can to help you. There is a lot that needs to be done, and the Chief Constable, when I recruited him, there were 4 red lines that I put to him. Number 1 was to drive up performance. Number 2 was to support me in ending the compulsory police degree, and he absolutely agreed with me on that. I lobbied very hard into the Home Secretary, she listened, it is no longer compulsory, and we estimate that with our recruits that we have on board at the moment, the new recruits that take 3 years to be fully qualified, we are going to save in excess of 100,000 policing hours a year by them not spending time in a classroom, but instead being out with experienced officers like Rob and Alex, actually learning how to arrest rather than writing essays about it. And finally, I wanted him to drive up performance, and that includes things like the 101 service. There's a whole load of things that we went through together to make sure that we're on the same page, and we absolutely are. And I'm very excited about news that will be coming your way over the next 4 weeks about how the whole police operating model here in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight is going to change, which is going to, in my opinion, significantly improve performance. Yeah. So, questions? Do you want to be question master?
Do you want me to take that? Yeah. Who wants to ask the first question then? Please keep your eye.
Karen,
Yeah.
Karen, can I just ask, shall I keep the camera this way because I don't have permission there?
I think so, yeah. Thank you. Michael.
Hi Donna, Michael Ward, I'm like you in finance, with my own business for over 30 years. My business is in Ryde. You've increased the police level, you're saying. It'd be nice to know how many that's increased on the island, because 4 weeks ago, my son had an arson at his home in Binsted, and the fire brigade turned up, but the police didn't. You know, we need to know all the time. Serious like that, it begs to believe what could have happened if we, as a family, weren't quick enough in the fire brigade, but the police never turned up, and it's taken quite a lot to get it sorted out. What we need to know is when there is a high risk of something like arson, you know, there is enough police on the island to be available.
Thank you very much. Well, with situations like that, I'm very sorry to hear about your son being a victim of arson. We'll pass to Rob in a moment, but actually the fire brigade have their own fire investigators as well, because they are the experts to see, was it petrol, was it a match, how did the fire start? So they then will liaise with the Constabulary if there is criminal intent that can be proven, but I will pass to the experts in a second. In terms of some of the improvements and the uplift of the police officers you've had here, obviously, it was, you know, your MP Bob Seeley lobbied me very hard, as did a number of you, around having your own dedicated roads policing unit, and I'm really pleased that we've been able to bring that back for you, and there's been some policing operations on the roads we may come to later with other questions which we can go into. Obviously, the other thing as well was, I should have mentioned, was around changing the name of the force. You told me you wanted it to be Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and I'm really pleased. I think the only police force in recent times that I've been able that has managed to change its name, and it was our outgoing policing minister, Kit Malthouse. It was the last piece of legislation that he put through as policing minister. So anyway, in terms of the numbers, I'm guessing around 20 in terms of uplift to neighbourhoods, and that was in the first couple of years. There may be a few more than that now, but in terms of the new police officers that come over, that then bumps them into other departments. So when you have more people going into responsible patrol and local policing, neighbourhood policing teams, NPT as we call them, that then means you're able to free people up to go into roads policing, armed response, become a detective or whatever it may be. But I'm going to hand over just to Rob for a second on that one.
Yeah, thanks Donna. I had this query a while ago. It always sounds a little bit evasive when we talk about how many more officers we've got from the uplift, but that's partly because our recruiters and HR have got people joining and going into different streams. So we have some officers now that join a direct entry for detectives, so they'll be taken on, they'll go into a different department to become fast-track detectives, which we're short of. Others will go into responsive patrol, and others come into neighbourhood policing. But I did manage to get a figure last week for another inquiry, and it's actually closer to 30 officers have joined the island in the last 3 years through the uplift. 10 of those approximately have gone into Isle of Wight investigations, CID, and then the others split between response officers and neighbourhood officers. And I'm reliably informed or reassured that the extra 50, we will get a proportion of those as well coming onto the island, based on demand and crime. We record probably 7% of the entire organisation's crime across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So obviously at that 50, there'll be other areas like the cities that will get more of that, and that's fairness. So at the moment, roughly 30 extra officers in that period of time. I'm sorry to hear about your experience with the arson. It's never good to get that feedback from the public. I've got 26 years in with the police, having joined, and I would say 20 of that has been in local policing. I've never been a detective. It's always been about frontline policing, uniform, and actually realising that over a period of time, quite often it's the small things that ruin people's lives. It's not always the big crime, the organised crime, criminals, the drug-related crime, the knife-enabled sort of drug dealing. Quite often it's antisocial behaviour, and it's the lower level stuff that make people feel uncomfortable in the street. So if I'm not aware of that one, hopefully you've written to somebody so we can follow it up. But I think with this, somebody was arrested and put through the courts. Would that be right?
I mean, I'm sadly living in fear because he's opposite, but it's going to court on the 23rd of May. The trouble is, you know, I mean, if it wasn't the fact that they had ringtone, doorbell, which we've all got as family, the bin was by the side of their back door, as it got looked at. So, you know, the consequences would have been unbearable. And he has since come back and threatened him more since. So we're just not getting the support because what they are. They're both key workers, you know, so long time they're not getting the service they feel in fear, and they've been staying at our house a lot because they've got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old child.
Okay, maybe we can pick this up afterwards, and I'll get the local sector inspector to link in with you and actually make sure we don't.
I'll put it to police standards.
Yeah, and you're within your rights to do that. I'll do what I can operationally here, but if there has been a shortfall in service, then quite rightly you're entitled to complain, and professional standards will look at that for you.
Very much so. And after the PSD complaint has concluded, if you're not happy, that I should have covered that as well. That's something that I do as your commissioner is review, so I can get the whole case pulled and have a look at everything for you as well. If there are shortcomings, take that up on your behalf. I should also say as well, just carry it for a hand back, sorry, is that for the number of people that you have living here, because you are an island and you are unique, you have many, many more police officers here than what is it, 132,000 the population of the island?
140.
Sorry, 145. If you take 145,000 people in anywhere in Hampshire, they do not have the services that you have. A dedicated dogs unit, dedicated armed response unit, their own roads policing unit. They do not have that. So if you think about some fairly large villages in Hampshire, or 20 villages clustered, they do not have what you've got here. You have got challenges because you've got some dangerous roads and other things. But actually, please rest assured, your per head of ratio policing to population is good.
I mean, I appreciate that, but also, I mean, in my own charity and community work, I mean, I know a lot more statistics than a lot of other people, because I did 29 years as a non-executive director.
Michael, I think we're going to take this up afterwards, if that's okay.
So
So,
that's what I'm saying.
so we can move on. Who wants to ask a question next? I'll go down this, but Michael, I'll do you next.
Hi there, I'm Kirsten. I had a drunk driving accident, or I'd rather call it a car crash, because it was an accident where I and another person was hit 5 weeks ago, and it was done by a person who not only was drunk, but also didn't have insurance, didn't have a license, and had his 8-year-old daughter in the car. There was one officer who was at the scene, only one. So this goes back to what you were saying. Whilst I know that we do have a situation where we have a higher per capita number of police officers, it's necessary because obviously we need to run the services, therefore there's higher overhead costs. Fortunately, we're able to share some of those overhead costs with Hampshire, but inevitably the question is, do we actually have enough police officers? One person to close down Whippingham Road at the national speed limit sign, which is the only way in and out of East Cowes during Friday rush hour traffic, backing the traffic all the way up to Newport, all the way up to Ryde, where no one could get through, trying to handle the ambulance, trying to handle those who were injured, having to run after the fleeing suspect, and that's one police officer. Why was there only one police officer?
Thank you so much.
I can take that.
Steps in.
Yeah. Thanks for raising that, Kirsten. I'm actually aware of this. I think one of your councillors is speaking to me, and I've looked into that. The brutal truth is, it's operational policing. We have an allocation of officers for the island. We provide 24/7 response policing, and at times demand can outstrip our resources. So without looking at that one in particular, it could well be there was a dozen other incidents running across the island that they were going to, and that's always been the nature in all my time in policing on the mainland as well. There's times when we are run ragged and there isn't enough of us, and the ambulance service will say the same, and probably fire will say that sometimes at certain times of the year there's just too many to get to. Our controllers will grade incidents and send to the most risky at that period of time. Probably wasn't pleasant for people involved in the accident, and probably quite stressful for the officer that was on their own there as well. I've been there as a PC as well. It's not ideal. The ideal would be that we'd have hundreds more officers, and at key times when it wasn't busy, they'd be sitting around eating donuts probably. We just need to get the balance right. There'll be times when we're stretched, and sometimes it's not good enough, and we have to look into it as you've raised it. I think looking at that, I think certainly looking at the one you've raised, I think we could have done better initially with the contact with you as a witness, with what was happening, etc. But again, with that, somebody was prosecuted and put through the courts for that job. Was that right?
Yes, that's. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Sure.
That's fine.
Yeah.
obviously with jurisprudence issues and issues of double jeopardy, one can't talk specifically about the court case. However, I can say that because there was only one police officer, that my victim statement was never taken, and I tried 8 times in person, online, and through 101 to just email my photos and my victim statement. Therefore, when I went to the court case, which was rushed through in 2 weeks, and we've never heard of a 2-week trial, 2 weeks, and the charges were done prematurely as well. They were done in less than 24 hours over a weekend. You potentially missed out on some much more serious charges, such as dangerous driving.
Yeah, and it will be looked at. It may well be that the statement may not have made any difference to what was going to happen in court. That doesn't excuse the officer not coming back and explaining why it wasn't needed. For me, it's a breakdown in communication. The officer, again, we've mentioned 101 there, that needs looking at. Everybody knows that could be much improved. But it may well be that statement was not necessary for the CPS to take that course. They will guide us on what they think is going to succeed in court.
But if you didn't have a statement to start with, you can't determine whether.
Yeah, but there was other statements enough to take that person to court as far as the CPS were concerned.
People who actually saw it.
Yeah. I'm not going to second guess what we look at, but it may well be that this was just a case of you could have been informed. That's great, but we've got enough already to take this person to court.
Thank you. On your chairs, I have put my contact details for everybody. So if there's anything you want me to know to take up with our meeting or take forward for you, please fill it in. I have got pens with me, so we can do that afterwards. Sharon, I'll come to you soon, but I've got Michael next. What's the Michael's?
Hi, I'm Councillor Michael Smith from Newport Council Community Council. One of the 3 questions is how we're going to stop and improve road safety for pedestrians, especially in Newport. I got hit 2 years ago, and there's a couple this year. And also, we've got a big problem around Newport with drugs and drink. People crashing their cars on Councillor, antisocial in Sea Close Park. And also, how are we going to stop the drug barons and drug haven in the Isle of Wight? Because apparently it's picked up, national crime units on investigation all the time. It's got to be sort of stopped to make it safe. We need the island back.
There's a lot of questions.
Yeah, really good points. The scourge on drugs, we're losing it. We're losing that battle across the country. As well as being the Commissioner here, I've got 2 national portfolios. One is serious and organised crime. So I work very closely with the National Crime Agency. The country is split into 9 regions when it comes to tackling serious and organised crime, and they are called the Regional Organised Crime Units of Rockies. We have one in the southeast that covers Hampshire, Thames Valley, who are our buddy police force. Every force is buddied with another police force. Sussex, Surrey, and a little bit of Kent. And it's a busy region, as you can imagine, because of our proximity to London. They are also work very closely and are situated in the same building, the people that work on countering terrorism as well. And the amount of information that is coming into the country and that we are dealing with to catch organised crime gangs, OCGs, that are bringing drugs into the country is off the scale. There are so much criminality linked to drugs, such as 3D printers now, where you can print a gun and then you get the firing mechanism that can be retrofitted. People who are buying toy guns, imitation guns from Turkey that look really good and they're well made, the casing is very well made, and then again retrofitting those explosives. We've got about 48 OCGs working across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, the majority of which are linked to drugs, but there are some around sex, exploitation, trafficking, people trafficking, and rural crime as well, as you probably would imagine. There is a lot going on. I also sit on the national executive of the Regional Organised Crime Units as well. So serious and organised crime is managed. If it's a cannabis farm on the Isle of Wight that's in a home that's being grown by local people who are farming those plants, it'll be dealt with by our serious and organised crime unit here in Hampshire. If it's across Portsmouth, Southampton and the island in a triangle, the Regional Organised Crime Unit may get involved, particularly if it covers across the Thames Valley or to Dorset, something like that. If it's on an international scale, which of course Class A drugs, most of the heroin in the world, 82% of the heroin in the world comes from Afghanistan, and of course cocaine-based drugs come from South America. So then it would be the National Crime Agency tasking into the ROCU or dealing with it themselves. They have their own investigators as well. So there is an awful lot going on, and we have, I think our force is doing a brilliant job when it comes to dealing with the big stuff. Catching rapists and murderers and people that are committing really, really serious crimes of harming people, you know, stabbings, GBHs, and also when it comes to tackling serious and organised crime. More does need to be done, I completely get that, but I just wanted to cover that point. And in terms of the other points and the roads, I'm going to hand over to Rob.
Okay, so Michael, big up the roads first and all. I've been really impressed with what I've seen in the last 5 months on the Isle of Wight. We've got a small dedicated roads policing unit. I never had that in Portsmouth as a chief inspector. The island's got 2 dedicated officers who work with armed response officers who are roads officers trained as well. There's 2 concurrent operations that run frequently here, Operation Mile and Operation Whitewash. Whitewash is looking at the more rural roads with speeding. Operation Mile, I think in the last 4 weeks had over 100 prosecutions or tickets issued for poor standards of driving, so they're onto it here, and actually we're well served on the islands. The local roads policing officers here regularly have mainland RPU officers coming across to do the operation. So if you look at social media, county press, etc., you'll see lots going on there with it. I was asked a question at the council chamber 2 weeks ago when they looked at the community safety plan, and I think somebody asked, is it true we've got some of the most dangerous roads in the country? No. You've got rural roads, you've got complacent drivers living on an island, and I've seen that working in other areas as well. People get comfortable with the roads, with shortcuts, they take chances. If they're impaired through drink or drugs, then the judgment's out. And when you have an accident at 40, 50 miles an hour on a rural road, it can be catastrophic. You'll roll the car, etc. In an urban road, you're probably going to shunt into the car in front of you and not get that seriously hurt. So we're doing a lot on that. There's more to be done with it. Again, the question was asked, is it older drivers who aren't fit? Is it mainlanders? No, it's young people as well. I think some of the serious casualties we've had, in Sergeant Corby from our roads unit will say probably one involved a mainland driver coming across. So it's about complacency, it is impairment, it's lack of seatbelts, and it's speeding. Some of the big faults with that.
Are you all aware with On Mile? So for those of you who aren't on Facebook, I would encourage you all to go on the Isle of Wight Police Facebook. It's really good for understanding what we do, for communicating with us. But you can all elect your areas off Mile. So the way it works is each area, each neighboured area, they will pick a mile, well, it's not a mile, a road, a specific area. And if you've got significant concerns about that area, please get in touch with your local beat team. And effectively, it's a bit you said, we did. You say it's this street, we will then go and focus on that street, that area, for a given period of time, and we'll just keep changing those areas. It's not miles, those areas we do it. So you know, you've got that direct influence around Operation Mile, and we've certainly, and the reality of it is, in some places, and I remember last year briefing the councillors, we put them community speed watch there, and some of the feedback was actually people weren't going as fast as we thought they were. So there is a bit of that balance, but you can have direct influence with Op Mile over where you would like us to go. Now clearly, we also focus on areas where we have death and serious injury. So the way it effectively works is we focus our road traffic policing in areas where we have the most accidents, which makes sense. And then the local authority supports us with road calming measures and all that good stuff. But as I say, through the Facebook, you can all have a bit of influence on where you would like the miles to be.
Can I just say as well, because I know that there's lots of hands going up and we need to be quick with our answers. Community Speed Watch, if anyone wants, if you want to set up as a councillor, Community Speed Watch, apply to me, I can pay for the £6,000 or £7,000 of equipment for you. Secondly, year 6 and 7, I pay for drug tests, I pay for charities to go into schools, including on the island, to be working with young children, particularly when they get their smartphone for the first time and they're more susceptible to being introduced to drugs in secondary school. I've also just signed off drug testing on arrest for everybody, minors, youth in custody and adults, so that when they're in custody in a cell, without their phone, without their peer group, there is a counsellor that can go and speak to them and get them on a path when they are released from custody or when they come out of court. And finally, there is a drugs partnership board, which I now chair, which covers Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Amanda sits on it. The Unitary Authority, the County Unitary and the Isle of Wight are very, very involved in that. There's a whole lot of work that's going on behind the scenes to make sure that public health, councils and policing are working together.
And also to let you know, Michael, I'm the cabinet member that road safety comes under, and also Phil with Island Roads, there is a speed review coming out, so it'd be quite interesting to maybe
Yeah, the community
get
council's
together
got a
at
good,
some point.
good relationship with
Yeah.
Phil and Island Roads, whatever.
Yeah, but it'd be like interesting, Phil, for us to speak
Yeah.
about this up mile, maybe as part of that strategy.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's got some data with it.
Yeah.
We love data. Okay, and then Sharon after, then Michael.
John Graney from Brady. A lot of what you do in road safety is going to depend on statistics, the accidents. A little while ago in Brady, we had an accident in the high street. A car travelling roof first, hit some obstacles that caved in the roof. They had to prop it up and take the lady and the little dog out. They weren't hurt. I strongly suspect the little dog was driving. But this was in a 20-mile-an-hour limit, approaching a junction. You're not expecting a car to be travelling roof first in a 20-mile-an-hour limit. But no injury, no. The statistics are all based, I understand, on the KSI, killed and seriously injured. I mean, that's important, yes. But if you go to our, I don't even know.
Somebody's phone. Or is it Carol's?
That's you,
Carol,
Karen.
your phone.
If you go to our local,
Ringtone.
Maybe it's somebody asking a question.
mine plays an old shadows number, it's not me.
So you.
If you go to our local,
Spills for a minute. I was
the
looking
local
at
news websites, Island Echo or the County Press, do a search on the word roof. You might get 2 about architecture, but the rest, over 90%, are car on roof at, car on roof at, car on roof at. Yes, they're rural roads, but there is a road safety problem. All right, people are not dying because of these wonderfully new cars and the straps and the airbags and everything. But if you're only recording killed and seriously injured, your statistics are not telling you the problem.
Because I got.
By all means.
So I had a meeting with the road safety team. So I saw the website where you, and I can send that out as well, so you can have a look. It says it's slight.
Yep.
Isn't it?
Mm.
There's green, amber and red basically. So I can send that to you. But what is quite, that when people have injuries maybe and they don't report it, it doesn't get reported on there. So as with everything else, report.
This is where Alex's advice is that engage with us on social media, Facebook and the local team, and we can get the roads policing people out there, or we can set up community safe speed watch and actually monitor it and see if we can find out.
Are you all aware, so when you've got dash cam footage of people driving how you wouldn't expect them to, so if you go on our website, I've done it and I'm not the most technically literate person in the world, it is simply, you can get your dash cam footage, you can download it onto the website, there's a team that will look at it, and obviously it might be a letter to the registered keeper, but it might be a prosecution. So if you tell us, and like you said, I think it's really worth pointing out, road safety is a team game. It's very much us, Island Roads, local authority. We do prosecute quite a lot. We are the only area in Hampshire with our own dedicated road policing team. We, to the best of my knowledge, are the only people who do something like Op Mile, because we recognise it's a community concern. So we are focusing on it. Obviously, about death and serious injury, we've got to focus our resources where the most serious injuries occur. But as I say, there's lots of roots into it, and I just encourage you to tell us. Operation Mile is a really good route in for you to tell us, and we'll focus on the routes, the areas you tell us, and then we'll tell you what happened. And it might be that as a result of you telling us stuff, we've recognised the problem we didn't know before, and it might be we're designing out a road furniture, it might be we put some lines on the road, it might be we put cameras up, all those sort of things. But you need to tell us where you think, you'll know much better than we will ever know about where the problems are, and I just encourage you all to contact us for Op Mile, and we can work through it.
Thank you. So just to let you know, Sharon's going to be next, and then it's Michael, then Emily, and we'll go from there.
Good evening, Sharon Cole. Back along you said something about Thames Valley, Hampshire police buddying up and some other police forces buddying up in the future. So does that mean that control rooms for them will be based at Kidlington and Milton Keynes, or have they relocated? And please don't answer that question now, it's a double question. Because if that is the case, can I make a suggestion that to cut out a lot of this confusion, if local councillors and some members of the public might be invited into these control rooms to actually see in real time how they operate, so they can actually enrol that into the community, and then they can start getting the right questions coming backwards and forwards to yourselves, and that way we'll build up a better repertoire between yourself and the community, and also we'll be more targeted and we will understand more about your targets and things that you have to focus on, while you might not be actually reaching everybody's requirements at a given time. And I just think that would be so much better for us. Thank you.
Excellent. I've been invited, I've got it in the diary.
Yeah, I was going to say, so yes, every police force is already buddied with another police force. So Sussex and Surrey, Hampshire and Thames Valley. That's really good for us, being buddied with Thames Valley, because they are the 4th largest police force in the country outside of the Met, and we are the 5th. And we have something called a joint operations unit that is all of our specialist stuff. So dogs, firearms, horses, and other things, public order policing. So we share resources, and if we hadn't have done that over the last 10 years, we would have lost some of that specialist capability. We also have a marine unit here. We're one of only 5 forces that has a marine unit as well, because we have more miles of coastline because of the Isle of Wight than any other police force in the country, in England and Wales, not Scotland. Yes, you're absolutely right. So in terms of the call centres, we have 2 in Hampshire. One is in the big police station in Southampton at the bottom of the M271. So if you phone 999 or 101, in 9 out of 10 incidences, your call will be answered by somebody in Southampton. The person that is deploying, the deployers who are speaking to Alex and Rob when they're in a police car driving, saying, right, go to number 62, there's somebody there with a knife, the intel on this address is blah, 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 is somebody who sits in Netley, which is effectively the kind of police HQ in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, the big Netley site. I don't know if you've ever been there. So you have the people that answer the phones, and then you have the deployers, and they hear each other. So if I'm saying, hello, Hampshire Constabulary, how can I help you, on a 909 call, and I'm talking to you and I'm typing everything down, and a deployer is then able to look at my screen, and they can also listen to what you and I are talking about, and then they can switch on to telling the police officers, okay, they've just said red balaclava, black trainers, whatever. So it all happens in real time. In terms of councillors coming to visit the control room, that is already in hand. Karen, as your cabinet member for the county unitary for community safety, is coming on the 29th of June to the control room in Netley, along with, I can't take everybody, I'm sorry, but along with the police and crime panel. If there are other people that are interested, please contact me or Karen, and we can help you and try and get that. I can't, it's not an open invite, there's no way I can open that up to the public, but particularly people who are elected to represent thousands of people, they are the key ones that, like Karen and the other councillors here, that then need to come and feed that information back. But Karen, you have a representative on the police and crime panel to hold me to account. Karen is your rep. Ian Ward is here. He was at the meeting the other day. So you have people here who are doing that for you and on behalf of you. And if you want me to contact you up with them, I can. In terms of the 101 service, it is probably, apart from changing the operating model of the force to improve it and take it back to a very much more geographical policing model, which is what the Chief Constable is doing, to drive up performance. The other #1 priority at the moment, and there is what we call a gold group set up. So when something is not working in policing or something is broken, if you've worked in the environment, you'll know. We have a gold group set up for the 101. We have around 80 vacancies at the moment, and that is what is causing the delays in the phone being answered. Largely created by a lot of people that worked in contact management wanting to become police officers. So because we've had this volume recruitment over the last 3 years, we have lost people every month. We're losing about 8 to 9 people a month that are either leaving or they're going to become a police officer or a PCSO. So there is a big recruitment programme going on. We've got bigger classrooms, we've got more trainers, we're really maxing up the speed that we're bringing people in. Things are definitely going to improve. I'm also setting up a victims hub because around 35,000 calls a year go in on the 101 service to say, can you just give me an update on my crime? Such as the lady with the incident with the car earlier. I want to give you my witness impact statement. So by having a victims hub, we're going to divert 35,000 calls a year away from that, and I'm spending about £1 million on that as well.
That'd be a great change. Michael.
Thank you. Councillor Michael Lilly, but also trustee of the Isle of Wight Youth Trust. There was a cooperation this year between the Isle of Wight Council Probation Service, the police and Isle of Wight Youth Trust that had identified, particularly coming through the police, through Inspector MacDonald at the time, that there needed to be a preventative programme of young people going into, that were vulnerable to go into criminal activity, and that was really needed. And a very, very good bid was put together by three that went to the Youth Endowment Fund, which I think you're
very involved in as well.
with it, that would have actually supported 100 young people over 3 years. That was unsuccessful, but that bid is still there, and that proposal, and it's been very clearly said at the recent Corporate Scrutiny Committee, which I'm a member of, and in fact Amanda there actually stated that there was a need for funding to actually look at this. Can you look at that bid and actually work with the Isle of Wight Council, Isle of Wight Youth Trust and the police on this island, because they called for this need, to actually look at where we can get that funding from?
Yes. Thank you, Michael. Emily, you're next. I'll come to you in a minute.
I will 100% do that. We put in 5 bids to the EF, to the Youth Endowment Fund, as a man will know. We weren't successful on any of them. It was massively oversubscribed. I think they gave money to 25% of every bid. It's always oversubscribed. However, I am spending hundreds of thousands of pounds a year on the island through the victim services, Community First, lots of organisations, Action Ryde, a whole lot of people. I am very, very happy to look at it. Do you know how much it was for? Roughly?
I think it was about 1 million, wasn't it, over 3 years?
Okay. All right. I thought I was going to attempt to commit to some spending some money, but I'm not sure I can commit to £1 million tonight. But yes, I will absolutely look at it. Let's see what we can do together, because it might be that we do it in phases, and that we try and get there as best we possibly can. Also, it's really good for us, and Amanda will know this as well, to have oven-ready schemes that we can just go, because when it gets to September, October, November, if government departments, particularly the MOJ and the Home Office, are not getting their money out of the door by the 31st of March, it goes back to the Treasury. So they will simply say 2 weeks to get bids in. Last year I secured £480,000 for a trauma-informed scheme that we ran across the force about tackling adverse childhood experiences that lead to, that criminality that lead to kids carrying knives and smoking marijuana, to numb out the pain of what's going on at home, and parents arguing, and domestic abuse, or depression, alcoholism, whatever it might be. So actually there's an awful lot that we have been successful on in that area. The drug testing on arrest was a bid that I put in, an opportune bid I put in, and I secured the money. Very, very happy to work with you. I've actually got some money specifically for the purposes you're talking about around youth diversion. Not £1 million, and it is for the whole of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. But let's get started on something. Let's see what we can do. Amanda knows the process really, really well. She's working with my office every single week, so I'm really, really happy to take that away for you. And I wish I had a list today of all of the youth diversion schemes that I'm funding on the island. You know that we've got the football starting on the it's the football starting on the Isle of Wight, which thanks to Joe, who's at the back of the room, came to me with that to make sure that we've got diversion from the ASB that happens in the summer holidays in Ryde as well.
Thank you. And when we were talking about Amanda works with me at the Isle of Wight Council. She's a community safety partnership.
Thank you. That was what we were wondering.
You're just chair. You're just Amanda. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm going to go to Emily next.
Hi, Emily Brothers. I'm a resident of Sandown. on the point you just made about control rooms, just as a supplementary, do you have domestic violence coordinators in those centres? My main question though is about, we hear much about culture in police, and most recently of course about the Metropolitan Police in terms of racism, homophobia, misogyny, and set out in the Louise Casey review. What's your perspective on the culture within Hampshire and Isle of Wight Police Force? What are you doing to root out bad practice, and how are you seeking to improve a more inclusive culture? Thank you.
Excellent, very good question.
Thank you. So in terms of domestic abuse, I don't know if people are aware, but for the first time ever, violence against women and girls and the wider domestic abuse issue has now become a national strategic policing requirement. There have been 5 national strategic policing requirements for years, such as countering terrorism and tackling serious and organised crime. For violence against women and girls, as of 2 months ago, the Home Secretary undertook a review last year and has now decreed that violence against women and girls is now is the 6th priority. I should caveat, actually, while it's not really a very good, helpful title, because it does also include violence against men as well, which can be committed in same-sex relationships, or of course women onto male partners too. There is something that we've been piloting in Hampshire, and it has been really, really successful, and that's something called RVR, remote video recording. Now, for not all victims of domestic abuse, they don't all want a police car outside their house. And of course, if you are living in a very controlling and coercive relationship, even being able to pick up the phone and speak freely can be a huge, huge barrier. Sometimes even going to the GP on your own without a partner in the most serious situations can be a really challenging thing. So getting help and support is almost a way of they have to plan an escape to get away from those abusive relationships, as we know. What we've been piloting, and we've had brilliant victim feedback, is that people can actually call the police. They are sent a link. It's almost like going onto Zoom, and they're able to give a full account and do their interview to report domestic abuse via a link, so that they do not have, with a police officer in the contact management centre, in the 101 centre, so that they do not have to have a police car outside their home. Now, the downside of that is that if there are other safeguarding issues in the home, such as the children being neglected or whatever it may be, they are not as easy to pick up. So there is a risk assessment attached to it, but for the victims who are using it, there has been incredibly positive feedback. So that is now going to be rolled out wider across the country, but we were one of the, in fact, I think we were the first force to do that here. In terms of the, and I should say that I also pay for over 300 independent sexual violence and independent domestic violence advocates who support you, and you have got very good services. I fund them, as do the local authority, so through Karen's portfolio and supported by Amanda as the senior manager in that area. So we are working together on domestic abuse very, very closely with the unitary authority. In terms of the Louise Casey review, well, yes, it was shocking, and obviously it focused a lot. It was commissioned by the Mayor of London's office. Obviously, it did focus, therefore, on the Metropolitan Police Service. But what it has done has really shone a light on corruption and bad practices within policing, and by that I mean people who are acting in a corrupt way to abuse their position as being a police officer or a police staff member. That has led to all police forces in the country reviewing their practices. And in fact, His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary did an independent review for the Home Secretary, which came back with 43 recommendations, things to do with vetting and other things. And Police and Crime Commissioners had to go back to the Home Office by a date which was in February to confirm that those 43 recommendations had been implemented or were in the process of being implemented. I can tell you that we have done all of ours here in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So when the new Chief Constable started, one of the things I asked him to do was to review the Police Standards Department in Hampshire and to also review our Anti-Corruption Unit, our ACU, because anti-corruption units should have the capacity to be working on proactive investigations, not just reactive. That hasn't always been the case here and also in other police forces. So I said to him, if you need more resource, you need to let me know. If I need to allocate more budget to you for that area, you need to let me know. In terms of the culture here in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary, it is nowhere near like the Met, but I can't stand here and tell you that it's all perfect, because in every profession you will always get bad people. However, I think police forces should be judged on how quickly and timely and professionally they deal with those individuals that we wouldn't want representing us as our police officers or police staff members. We have our previous Chief Constable, this was a real priority for her. She put a lot of importance on it, Olivia Pinkney. And I believe that we have a police standards department that is on the ball, that is dealing with what it needs to deal with. I think it could be a bit more timely, if I'm being absolutely honest with you. But do I think that people are slipping through the net? No, I don't. I think we have got a really good grip on it. And particularly when I look at our figures compared to other forces around us that are of a similar size. The Chief Constable has just promoted the head of the Police Standards Department from being a superintendent to a chief superintendent, and there is some more resource going in there as well. So we are both taking it incredibly seriously, both Scott Chilton and I hope that that will give you assurance. Those are the sorts of conversations that we are having on a very regular basis. I'm just going to really quickly hand over to Alex, if you don't mind, because he has actually been a Police Federation rep for a number of years and will be able probably to add a bit more of a police perspective on this too.
Yeah, so I wasn't expecting to be talking about that, but yes. So I was the former chair. Sorry, I was the former chair of the Hampshire Police Federation.
Put the microphone up. You put it on the floor.
I'll end up shouting. So I was the former chair of the Hampshire Police Federation. So in charge of the Staff Association locally. We've got a really good reputation with our professional standards team. I'll reiterate what Donna said. I think we have a pretty good culture. We do call it out as the Federation. The Federation gets contacted by colleagues to say we're not happy with people's behaviour, and on occasion that goes to our professional standards. So I think the whole team works, and I don't think, and I know we've talked about bad apple before, I don't think anybody wants to see the poor behaviour in policing. Like anything, I think the process to exit people from the organisation is slow. It's really challenging, but I'm really sure that no police officer wants any of these people representing me. It's been really hard for policing. As a police officer, been a police officer 25 years, I sometimes, when I meet people, I don't really want to tell people what I do because of that, because actually I am not that person, and none of my colleagues are like that, so it's a really challenging time for policing. But what I would say is I think people are really alive to it. I think the standards of professional behaviour in the 25 years I've been in policing have got consistently better and better and better. We're also much better at explaining what we do and why we do things. So that's pretty much what I can say about that. In terms of domestic abuse, so I'll just tell you specifically, I lead on domestic abuse on the Isle of Wight. Specifically, we have, so all of the other areas have a DAST, a domestic abuse support team. We were joined to the Eastern Area DAST, which was in Portsmouth, but since my time and Rob's time on the Isle of Wight, we have our own dedicated domestic abuse support team, supports victims, and also our high harm team focuses on perpetrators. So that's a two-tier approach. You can understand you've got a problem, and we'll help you get onto a domestic abuse course, which effectively they help perpetrators understand why they behave the way they behave. And if they don't behave, we'll lock them up. At every single opportunity, we've got some of the best performance in terms of our arrest rates for domestic abuse on the Isle of Wight. We don't sit on our laurels. We have something called the authentic voice of the victim. So our partners, Paragon, who are our partners who support domestic abuse victims, they go out and they will speak to victims of domestic abuse, and we get a proper warts and all view of what it's like to be a victim of domestic abuse, how the police dealt with it, were they treated, taken seriously, did we get back in touch with them, did they feel safe? We get all that feedback, that comes to me, and we make sure that we're constantly improving our game. So we have a really good, I would say, I wouldn't know, but we have a good service for domestic abuse in the Isle of Wight, and we've also taken what we've had on the mainland and improved it, because it's a really important thing, and it is part of that violence against women and girls. So we've also rejigged our nighttime economy policing. So it always used to be about public disorder and people having fights. We've worked in partnership, and all our licensed trade and our street pastors and all our police officers have been retrained to recognise those people who are just loitering in the nighttime economy for no particular reason. So we all, you know, I think they've been there forever. We just never, as a community, as a society, really recognise those people. But now officers, rather than necessarily looking for stopping the next fight breaking out, they do that as well. They're actually going up and saying, okay, you've been stood here for 3 hours loitering. There's vulnerable people around, both men and women. What exactly are you doing here? And actually, sometimes we need to exit those people, and that's, you know, that's supported by the licence trade, taxi operators, and all those sort of people who will see those vulnerable people in the nighttime economy. So we are enhancing all the things that practically we can do within the Isle of Wight. Sorry.
We've got a little bit of time left, but Donna, I asked you a question.
As well afterwards.
Sorry. So go to Lisa first, then Lynn, and then we'll come to you. So just want to touch on the fact that we're going to have our own rape. Yeah. Could you just touch on that for 2 seconds?
Yeah, so if you are raped or seriously sexually assaulted on the Isle of Wight, really terribly, you have to travel to Portsmouth to have DNA extraction taken. And this is done in a Home Office approved site. It has to be clinically sterile, and they are called SARC, Sexual Assault Referral Centres. And it is just adjacent to Queen Alexandra Hospital in Cosham, for those of you that know it. They're specially trained people there, gynecologists, nurses, and counsellors, and I also pay for therapeutic counsellors on your behalf to be supporting victims of rape and serious sexual assaults. We have just around 4,000 rapes and serious sexual assaults in this police force area every year. Some of those are historic. They don't all require DNA in evidence collecting in that way. It is not ideal that rape victims are told not to shower, to have to travel on public transport, which is a ferry. You are not really, it's not ideal to consent to having DNA evidence collected on the day of your rape, so you're told to wait until the next day without having had a shower. And then you go on public transport, and the Isle of Wight ferry were not happy about people staying in vehicles because it's not safe, so you'd have to go and sit up on the deck with other people. And of course that is absolutely horrific. So luckily we now have an arrangement where victims are able to stay in a police vehicle, but at the moment victims are still going over to the mainland. So it's not a service commissioned and paid for by me and the police force. It is actually paid for through, by NHS England. They are actually the commissioners of SARCs. So I've managed to track down a lady called Jo Fowler, who is the Deputy Director of NHS England, and she is the Commissioner of SARCs across England and Wales. She has agreed that you need one on the Isle of Wight. But she will fund the gynaecologist, the nursing support, because of course that is the health element to it. So we're now working on a location. The hospital, previously there was an ad hoc arrangement where there was a room in the hospital which could be used. I'm going back 10 plus years ago, but because of Home Office standards now for the collection of evidence having to be so meeting certain standards to not be challengeable in court during a rape or serious sexual assault trial, we can't just use an ad hoc clinical examination room in the hospital. It would have to be a room that was 2 rooms ideally that would be specifically sectioned off. So that's being worked through at the moment, but the Isle of Wight will be getting its own sexual assault referral centre.
Thank you, because we needed that for a while. So I'm going to Lisa, and then Lynn, and then thank you. We've got 20 minutes before Donna's got to go.
Hi. At the beginning of July last year, my son was the victim of an indiscriminate violent attack where, just down the road from here, he was stabbed in the face whilst walking to a friend's house. That's not that. That same night, our receptionist son was beaten up by strangers in Newport bus station. 3 or 4 weeks prior to that, our apprentice at work was beaten up by 3 men whilst walking home from the gym. These lads are all between the ages of 19 and 22, all minding their own business, attacks by strangers. Although I applaud the efforts and the national campaign to keep women and girls safe, what are you doing to keep our young men safe? Because there isn't a month that goes by where one of their friends hasn't been a victim of just a random punch in a pub, or, you know, I know councillor, one of our councillors also, their son was hit in a random attack. and my daughter feels safer walking home with my son.
How old are your children? Do you mind saying?
19 and 21.
Okay. Well, I have one that's about to become 18 and a 20-year-old, so I feel your pain. Teenage boys and early 20s are the most likely to be stabbed and robbed in this country, as you've just quite well pointed out there. I'm really, really sorry to hear about that. There is an awful lot going on. This week is Operation Sceptre Week, I don't know if you know. Twice a year, it's a real amnesty on knives where they can be handed at police stations, and where police are stopping and searching and really stepping up the stop and search. My son, my youngest son, when he was 16, so a couple of years ago, said to me, why don't the police just stop and search everybody? Because if you've got nothing to hide, then what's the problem? I wouldn't carry a knife, Ben doesn't carry a knife, my oldest son, so I don't care if I get stopped and searched. They can search me whenever they like. And I said, well, okay, they can't just do that because of civil liberties, but I understand the point you're making. Children are frightened, and what we also know is that young people are now carrying knives not because they have criminal intent, but because they feel scared and they feel like they need to do that for protection. Having set that up, so I'm going to pass over to Rob.
I could try and cop out this as it only started in December, but this is an issue that we're well aware of, and you know, after I arrived I was aware of a lot of work that was going on, particularly around Newport and the bus station as well. We've made that a priority for this year, not only antisocial behaviour and road safety, but actually youth violence is one of our priorities. So we've got VOG, Violence Against Women and Girls, which is a national priority and it will remain a priority here for us, feeding the nighttime economy. We have focused on youth violence as well. A lot of it can be lower level as well. It's not always as graphic as stabbings, as you mentioned there as well. Some of it is the social media crazes that go with TikTok as well, where it starts off as antisocial behaviour, then becomes bullying, and then becomes assaults that's recorded and played out forever and more, making it even worse for the child that was affected. We have something called Operation Sentinel running across the Constabulary at the moment, and we have 2 areas in the island that we're focusing on. Operation Sentinel is using data to map and plot where all of our antisocial behaviour and public disorder is happening, and lo and behold, Newport Bus Station is one of those areas. We have regular funded patrols that go out there and commit to stopping searches and engaging with people as well. So it is a priority for us going forward. There is a lot of talk about violence against women and girls, and rightly so, because it's been something that's been underreported and not taken seriously over the years. But we can't leave behind the fact that, as you say, young men are still more likely to be victims of random stranger attacks or violence, whether it's on the island, Portsmouth, or anywhere else in the country. So it will be a priority for us going forward.
I just remembered that, and you probably remember this, I tried to bring the knife angel to the Isle of Wight, but didn't get quite enough support. So I've just shown it to Donna, who wants to make...
Well, the force previously had quite a strong position on this, in that they didn't like the knife angel, and you know, that was that. New chief is very up for talking about what's really actually happening out there and saying, actually, let's call it out for what it is. We have been offered the knife angel for, I think it's a slot in October or November. It's very, very big. You basically get it for free, but you have to pay the transportation costs. Yeah. So we were looking at this for Hampshire. If I can get it and work with you guys for a location and security and everything else, we can certainly get that over here. I should also say, for your son and what's happened, absolutely terrible, both of them, and the apprentice, if they need any support, counselling, help, trauma that's come from that, because you said they feel frightened going out, again, let me know, because I'm commissioning services for exactly that purposes. And also, we are one of the 13 forces in the country that has a violent reduction unit. That is to tackle crime from 14 to 24-year-olds. The money comes to me, the violent reduction unit director, who used to be your superintendent here on the Isle of Wight, Jim Pegler, is now the violent reduction unit director. I also get given £250,000 a year under the serious violence duty, which has just literally got the money last month, first time ever, to tackle this stuff. So I've got money going back to the conversation about youth diversion and also putting in specific interventions for the worst offenders and for the most dangerous areas. They're called hotspot policing areas, and the force, with my office, have had to map the areas where people are the most likely to be stabbed, beaten up, robbed in the county, and then the violent reduction unit money that we get, which is £2 million a year, is then we have dedicated police officers who then work in those hotspot policing areas to tackle this. It's quite new, it's been around for about 18 months, it's growing, we've just got more money from the Home Office, so there is a lot of stuff going on, and I'm happy to talk to you offline about that if you want me to.
So just if you don't know what the knife angel is, it's made by the British Ironwork Centre, and it's lots of amnesty knives, isn't it? That were handed back in, and they made a big angel out of it. It's actually very nice. So I'm going to go to
Karen,
Lynn.
I forgot to mention as well, when I talked about 2 areas, there's one in Ryde as well for an Operation Sentinel, and on the whole, it coincides with our nighttime economy as well. So there's drink and substances involved with some of this violence as well. So the plan that we're revamping this year to actually get people out at the right times with support, ideally from partners as well, to try and tackle this, will be in Wight and in Newport as well.
Next question. Hi, it's Lynn Blackledge here. I'm known as the Go Live Granny that you'll see on there. I do, so I am videoing this. If anybody needs to get access, we will, Karen will be able to share it out. In 1972, then 1971, my house was burgled, and I married the policeman that came to see me. Because,
It does work out.
It does work. It does, but then we got divorced. But I like to bring a bit of humour. But he was in the Met, and you know, I thought of the police up here. I've been on the island 23 years, and it went right down to here. Personal circumstances, which I won't go into on the broadcast, but I've been watching you, Donna, and I've felt that I could feel it rising again. So I had to be here as soon as I knew that Karen had arranged this. One of the issues is community police. Are they real policemen?
Yeah.
And how does it operate? Because I live on an estate, and it's one of the fairly new estate. I said 15 years old, something like that. And there's all the houses, and then there's the community. What do they call them in the no, it's blocks of where people come and stay where they've had difficult circumstances. I don't want to label it in a wrong way.
Women's refuges.
Well, it's not just women. But there's a variety of people in there. There are some drug users in there. I know that. I've never had a problem with them. I used to do a community thing where I helped to feed them, but the community police officer, he was coming up the road one day, and I thought, oh great, I can report the issue that I couldn't get through on the phone. He didn't want to know what I was talking about. He wanted me to dob in the drug users. Now and he had letters he was bringing to all the houses for us. None of the neighbours signed up. We didn't have any issues with them. So how does that work? And how do you monitor them?
We haven't got much time left. So
I've
got one more person.
The community police officers.
Okay, so within the island, we've got three sector inspectors. So we've got Andy McDonald, who covers Ryde, and this side of Cowes. We've got Rob Abel, who covers the Bay Area, and we've got Matt Gooding, who covers Newport and all the way out to Freshwater. There's a bit of Cowes and that stuff. So each of those have Newport has got a team at Newport, there's a team at Cowes, and there's a team at Yarmouth. They have both police constables and PCSOs. There's a team at Ryde, and there's a team at Shanklin, which covers the whole of the Bay Area. So you've got a combination of PCSOs. They are people who walk around the community. They do a lot of our engagement. They're the people we want out talking to you and understanding all the problems. We've got the police officers who deal with mainly community crime, all sorts of other things, and gather intelligence. We've also got lots of community volunteers, so community speed watch and all those sort of things. So that's the way neighbourhood policing works. And they are focused on, so there's sort of 3 main things. They do a questionnaire and a survey. Those of you who are from the Bay Area will have seen the survey come out. I'll tell you the top 2. It's ASB and then ASB related to drugs. And then from the back of that, all the beat teams have a patrol plan. That patrol plan is based on 3 main things. Our crime data, so if we have a particular area that we've got a burglary problem or something else problem, a car crime problem, we'll get them to patrol those areas. We've also got the sort of you said, we did stuff off the community, off the questionnaires. That's the ASB patrols. So within Sandown and Shanklin, we've got Operation Spider. I hope some of you have heard about it. I've even been on social media talking about it. That's where we've worked with partners, with the local authority, with detached youth workers to take what is a lot of these kids are just nice kids who've got nothing better to do, and we've diverted them into other stuff. We've worked with another cohort of kids who they've gone to youth offending teams who we also work with, and that's about keeping kids out of prison. So we've done lots of work with them. And there are another group of kids who just don't understand, and we will go down the route of we will just keep dealing with them for the criminal offences until they decide that actually this isn't a successful way to do that. So that is what the neighbourhood teams do. They also, from the PCC's plan, they are involved with things like knife crime amnesty. So currently it's the week of intensification around knife crime. So our PCSOs are in the schools talking to young people and saying, do you know what? If you're carrying a knife, the one who's likely to get hurt with that knife is you. You might not want to think about doing this. So on the Isle of Wight, our PCSOs, we have, they've got the longest service. So they have been in the communities where they work the longest rather than anywhere else on the mainland. Our PCSOs tend to join and want to become and stay as PCSOs. In other areas and other police forces, it's a route into policing. Now, we do have some who go on to become police officers. That's absolutely fine. But on the Isle of Wight, we have a lot of, when PCSOs were first invented, we've got the originals. So they've been doing it a long time. They understand their communities. They've been in their communities a long time. And they really work with communities. So they're the broad things they do. Again, it all relies on you telling us what you want them to do. Now, that's overlaid then with our response teams, our CID teams, our dedicated ARV teams, our public protection teams, and all those other things. So I don't know what people you would think about monitoring. If you're concerned about people who are high risk sex offenders, high risk, all those
it was
sort
the
of people.
policeman, it was the community police officer. He wanted me to dob in people who were not causing me any grief. He brought a survey there.
Okay, well, without knowing the specifics, it could well be the PCSO was canvassing local residents as a result of other residents saying there's a problem with drug dealing here.
I'll tell you
so
what,
maybe the leaflets were
because I'm on the community.
Yeah. Got much time.
I did ask the others,
Yeah.
and none of them had got involved.
We can talk about that
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah.
I think we've got
Quick question.
one quick question, and then I've got a question about Ryde Police Station.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Thank you. In relation to your strategy, can you tell me what you're going to propose for the protection of children online against unsavoury people that are out to hurt them, which is a huge problem?
Thank you very much. Very succinct.
Thank you, and thank you for raising such an important question because it often doesn't come up actually. The new online safety bill is working its way through Parliament. It has been so delayed, which I'm really, really frustrated about, but it will bring about some greater protection for children, but it doesn't go far enough. Because of people's right to freedom of speech and liberty, it's all around that sort of stuff, which is why it's been actually massively curtailed. But what it will do is put an onus on companies like Meta and those companies that own Instagram and Snapchat so that they have a duty to protect children. There was a 14-year-old girl called Molly Russell that you may remember who was besieged with 60,000 images of self-harm and of killing yourself because she'd been Googling it and looking it up. And because of that, the cookies from her phone and her iPad meant that she was besieged with those images. And that, the coroner concluded, had a massive part in why she took her own life. And she was age appropriate on every single social media platform, and she lived not far from here along the south coast. Very, very tragic. Now, children being abused online is a massive, massive problem, as you will well know. The Philippines is the #1 country in the world for the exploitation of children, where mums often take their children to be prostituted while they wait in the hotel room because of the employment market there being so poor and the fact they're living on virtually nothing. A lot of these images then get shared into the UK, and of course we have what's called first generation images, which is where people are creating videos and pictures themselves. And the FBI are the leading law enforcement agency in the world in terms of sweeping. In fact, we were talking about this before the session started earlier, in terms of sweeping the world for the dark web on what's going on with indecent images and videos of children. And the dark web is so sophisticated now that you have rooms on the dark web that you can only go into if you're invited into. You have to prove yourself with first generation videos and images to be invited into some of these, and you go into a separate room and then you can go into another separate room. So some of these things are then not as easy to trace from law enforcement agencies. The National Crime Agency have mapped what they believe is the risk in the UK, and they believe that there are 700,000 individuals who are viewing and sharing indecent images of children online. And that statistic was put out in October last year. They put out a press release, but I think any national media covered it at all. It is a massive problem in this country and across the world, as we know. So I think that the online safety bill will help for children who are going onto Instagram or Snapchat and thinking they're talking to another 12 or 13-year-old, and actually they're not. They're talking to someone who is much older and is trying to harm and exploit them. But I don't think it's going to go far enough. Because of this, I mentioned about the year 6 and 7 and St Giles Trust and the charities that I pay to go into schools around drugs. That is also around the dangers of these things. Who is on the end of that Snapchat account? Just because they're putting a picture up of them, thinking that they are 12 or 13, they may well not be. And it's really about educating children. And I run something called a cyber ambassador scheme through my office. So we start with 4 or 5-year-olds, right the way up to universities. We're working in conjunction with GCHQ. They are now wanting to roll it out across the country to keep children safe online. And in fact, Amazon Web Services have reached out to me. I've IP'd it so that we don't lose the rights to it. The Hampshire, the Police and Crime Commissioner's cyber awareness scheme and our cyber ambassadors, and we go into schools and we train children about staying safe online and how to be a lead in your peer group and teach other people in your year group about the dangers, how to report stuff if you are. 3 clicks and you can be watching really free but quite violent pornography on a mobile phone. And I've got 2 sons, so I've had that conversation with them when they were younger. As a part of a big piece of legislation that came out last year called the Police Crime Sentencing Courts Bill, there was an element within that big piece of legislation that was called non-fatal strangulation. And that is because it's common amongst young people now to have quite rough sex and particularly to get to the point of asphyxiation, but not quite, where that is common practice. And if they don't do it, there is peer pressure that they are not doing it. The first conviction of non-fatal strangulation in this country, sorry, that's not true, in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary was on the Isle of Wight on the 7th of June last year. So actually, it is a lovely, beautiful place, the Isle of Wight, but you have got your problems just the same as everyone else. And as I say, the first conviction for non-fatal was here in Hampshire, it was here on the Isle of Wight. So thank you for raising it. It is an issue. We have a brilliant team called the ICAT team, the Internet Child Abuse team. People are working 24/7 in Hampshire Constabulary, working with the Regional Organised Crime Unit, working with the National Crime Agency, sharing data and intercepting some very, very dangerous people. We have lots of sex offenders living in our communities, and the police, probation and other specialist agencies are doing a good job of keeping them on the straight and narrow. But of course there are issues, there are very serious risks, and it's we have psychological screening every 3 months for people that work in the Internet Child Abuse team, because of course it's a horrible thing to have to work on.
Okay, so just one more question. Can we have our Ryde police station desk open, please?
Yeah!
Somewhere, some mornings or one afternoon a week, but just somewhere.
Yeah, so that's where I was immediately before I came here. We were there. I'm very aware of it, and I have been to Shanklin today for the same purpose. I have already announced the opening of a new police station in Cowes. I know it's the other side, and we were talking about Ryde this evening. But I'm absolutely committed to making sure that you have what you need here. Your police estate is quite aged. It's not been very well invested in over a number of years, and the police estate does come under the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner, so there is an awful lot to be done, including starting with Shanklin, as we spoke about earlier. You are going to have more front desks here. As I say, there will be a front desk in Cowes Police Station on the High Street there, but in terms of Ryde, it is a real strong contender. We're about 2 weeks away from finalising the review, and I'll be confirming information very shortly.
Can I say thank you to Donna and Rob and Alex and the rest of you for asking me questions. You've got some sheets on there. If there's any, you want me to contact you, if you've got any other questions you want me to find out for you, please fill it in. I've got some pens. And thank you for coming along. Donna,
Thank you, Karen, too, for arranging it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Karen.